Hey there, this is Beck again from Breathe and Blend Yoga, and I just wanted to follow up with the second part, or part 3 of my corset binding experiment. So what I decided to do after the week of binding and bringing the muscles back together and everything joining up, I wanted to just test it out. Instead of progressing through to exercises, I wanted to see how permanent that healing was in bringing those muscles back together. So let's measure it. If you remember my last video, basically my muscles had closed back up. After a week of binding, I was binding just at night, maybe 2 or 3 hours during the day. So let's see if it's back together. Now, if you're not sure what I'm doing here, go check out the how to check your diastasis or separate abdominal muscles video. Let's check it out. There's not really anything there, so that's fine. So that's a 2, and that's a 2. So we've got 1, 2, 2. When I started, before I did my binding, I was 2, 3, 2 or 3, I think. So it did come back together a little bit. The binding did help come back together, but the completed seal, I guess you could say, didn't last. So it works a little bit. In conclusion, it works a little bit, but it doesn't stay. So, and there's a couple of videos out there, especially on Lucy's corsetry, that addresses, if I start wearing a corset, do I have to wear it all the time, or will those muscles come apart again? So basically they will, but not as much as what they were before. The other thing I wanted to go over with you is I had a few students and comments on Facebook and stuff that were asking if people should do binding for themselves. Now, let's just make this clear to start with. This was an experiment for myself that I decided to share. I'm not telling you to go bind to fix your muscles. It was just an experiment just on the diastasis. Diastasis is an indication that something's not functioning properly because those muscles are separated. Other indications that things aren't functioning properly: lower back pain, pelvic floor dysfunction. So can you cough or sneeze or jump or laugh without kind of leaking or like peeing yourself a little bit? That's not normal. It's not supposed to happen. And that is a sign of pelvic dysfunction. You see, people that have had kids usually will just kind of think of it as a normal side effect of having a baby. It's not, and you can fix it really easy. It's just a little bit of remembering to do your pelvic floors. A bunch of yoga poses can go through that too. Maybe I'll do a yoga pose class on pelvic floor stuff. So that's coming up. But yeah, those are all indications that, maybe even pain in your hip joints. That's all indications that something is not working properly the way it's supposed to. So, but I was just focusing on the bringing in the muscles together. It's not a complete picture of what's going on, but it's an indication. And I was just curious, so I thought I'd test it. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to go over with you is that I was doing this because I have no pelvic floor dysfunction. I had a C-section. It was an emergency situation where I wasn't able to have a vaginal delivery. If you have had a vaginal delivery, there is much more stress on the pelvic floor. Pregnancy already gives you stress to the pelvic floor. All the weight, everything pushing down into the hips stretches out your pelvic floor. But vaginal delivery really stretches it out. Anyone that has had a vaginal delivery would definitely know about that. So because of that stress to the pelvic floor, sometimes, yes, you can start to leak and you feel like you can't really connect to those muscles in basically anything a G-string would cover. What happens sometimes is that those muscles are so weak, and then there's external pressure or force put onto your organs intra-abdominal pressure. So for example, say you're taking a poo and you push too hard, or you bind with a corset and that pushes everything down onto the pelvic floor. Maybe you hear about these super fit women that start running a week after they have their baby and they're not healed properly. All those kinds of things can lead to what's called a prolapse. And a prolapse is basically when your insides start to come outside. So the inside walls of your vagina can start to come out through your vaginal opening, or even your rectum can come out through your anus and stuff. So when you have a prolapse, corset binding is absolutely a big no-no. You do not bind when you have a prolapse, because everything's already starting to leak out and then you push everything down on top of it. So if you have a prolapse, please don't bind. The other thing that you can that you have to take into consideration too is that the gap. My gap is shallow, it's not very wide, and my linea alba in the middle is quite healthy, even though it's still separated. So what that means is you've got it's like a rubber band, and the more you stretch the rubber band, the thinner it gets, okay? So with this linea alba, mine's quite thick. You know if yours isn't, because when you put your fingers in, it'll feel very, very squishy. You may even feel a pulse from your abdominal aorta. You might be able to put your fingers in and even feel some kind of sort of internal organs. That's an indication that your linea alba is very, very weak, and corset binding will not really help with that situation. You need to strengthen your pelvic floor and your muscles first before you add a strap over the top, because you still need the support from the inside, not just a strap from the outside. So that's another thing to note. If you have a hernia, basically that means that the linea alba has got a tear in it, and your guts are basically leaking out through that little piece of glad wrap that's keeping your muscles in place, or not in place as it were. So if you have a hernia, that is absolutely not for you. You don't want to put any pressure from the inside or the outside onto a hernia, okay, until it's 100% healed. So do check with your doctor. This whole segment was just a curiosity experiment on my behalf. It wasn't medical advice. It was basically just to see what happens. So please go and see a specialist. GPs don't know much about this kind of stuff. Most GPs will tell you it can't be healed, you have to have surgery. But you can actually heal a diastasis with exercise and maybe a little bit of binding. Mine has come back together with a little bit of binding, but it's kind of half undone itself. So I will be combining some exercises with that as well. On that note, I wanted to refer you to the MUTU website, MUTU. So go check that website out, because it's got heaps of cool information, even if you don't do the program. But I will be taking up their program, which is, it's about $100 US, and it's in a 12-stage program. So you progress through each stage of exercises as you become stronger and it becomes suitable for you. So what I will be doing as well in the meantime is doing a pelvic floor yoga class, a couple of little exercises that you can do in the meantime to help you with your pelvic floor and your abdominal area. So yeah, that's just some stuff to think about. Please go and see a specialist being, a physiotherapist, or even a gynecologist, especially if you have a prolapse. Get a referral from your GP, but don't rely on the advice of just your GP. You need to see a specialist if you have situations going on through here. Even a core abdominal rehabilitation specialist. Like, I went to see the belly firm for the Tupler technique. That didn't work quite so well for me because the binding just hurt my kidneys so bad, and it made me feel really sick. The compression on my stomach, even after I was eating, that made me feel really ill. And the constant exercises that you had to do, the pulling in, always kind of almost pumping against your stomach, made me feel quite ill. So, and I found that it created a whole tension through the torso. So it did bring my muscles back together, but it didn't restore full strength and functionality to my torso, which is why I'm going to try the Mutu program. So as I start doing that, I'm not going to share the exercises fully from the program, because I think that's not fair, that's not ethical, because, you know, they have worked hard to develop that program, and, you know, you need to pay for that work that they've put in. But I will be keeping you updated on the progress that I'm making and which stage I'm going through, so you can see, you know, for yourself through me if it works, or you can even maybe judge from my experience to see if it's right for you. You know, sometimes you're a bit dubious about these things. Oh, is it really inconvenient? Do I have to exercise all the time? And all these stupid exercises that I have to do here and there and everywhere. And so I can share with you my experience, and that might help you to decide if you want to do it. But do check out their website. It's got lots of cool stuff on it. Anyway, that's enough chit chat from me. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. And if I am not qualified, I will refer you to someone who is, or a type of person that is. So yeah, you can pretty much guarantee with me that if I don't know, I'm not just going to make stuff up or, you know, guess. I will research it. If I don't know the answer, I'll refer you to somebody who might. Okay, so happy experimenting yourself if you're going to do that, and I'll see you next time.